All right, we're back. It's time to get into the Week 10 waiver wire with Boone here. Every week, Boone goes position by position, offers some of his top pickups. Cannot stress this enough, though. He mentioned in the last segment, as I say, we are reading again in 2025. There's going to be way more context available in the article about specifics, this, that, and the other, that we can't just sit here and break down the podcast, or we'd be doing a 5-hour show on the waiver wire, which, I don't know, sounds like not fun to me. So read the article, okay? We're reading again in 2025. You people out there are reading Justin Boone's waiver wire article every single week, or you better be. You better be. All right, let's get into it here. Let's go position by position, starting with our quarterbacks, Boone.
I'll even add this, Harmon, that if they're not reading, there's just lists of players as well and how I value them. So if you're looking for deeper pickups, you can go there. You don't even have to read. I don't want to make you read, but click on it and you'll go find some deeper pickups there if you're in one of these.
You do have to read to see the list.
Are already taken. Yeah, but just so that people aren't worried that they need to go, read an essay or anything about the waiver wire. It's all broken down in there for you. So there's lots of names, no matter what type of league you're in. But let's start with quarterbacks here. And I'm going to name a couple guys that are at or just above that 50% rostered mark that I normally use. But I'm going to name them because, to tell you what, once you get past some of the other names, it gets pretty ugly. So we'll start off here. Joe Flacco is on bye, but we're going to have to talk about him after the games he's had recently. Sam Darnold going up against the Cardinals, but both him and Flacco are at that 50% rostered mark. JJ McCarthy, who I can't even believe we're talking about him, but we're going to, versus the Ravens in week 10. And then Marcus Mariota, who I alluded to earlier, that yes, even though we put that Commanders offense in the coping corner, Marcus Mariota is still somebody that you could consider as a streaming option and a guy who's going to have some decent weeks. So for Flacco, he's on bye. You can't play him this week, but he has been so good. I mean, multiple touchdowns in every game that he started for the Bengals. Top 7 fantasy quarterback, 3 straight weeks here. And schedule-wise, there's still a bunch of positive matchups coming up for this offense. So as long as things don't go off the rails, as long as we don't start getting like fights between the offense and the defense, because we saw the Bengals offense was pretty upset that defense couldn't get any stops. So this thing, there could be coaches fired. I don't know what's going to happen, but as long as it stays the way it is, as long as these guys are healthy, this is just a real fantasy offense. They're going to put up some big games like we've seen. Sam Darnold, he's played very well this year. We talked about the rushing attack earlier and how that struggled. The passing game really has not. And I mean, coming off, I would say a great game, but really a great first half, right? He threw 4 touchdowns, didn't have to do much in the second half. They blew out the Commanders in that game, but it goes back further, right? Over the last 8 weeks, Darnold's been a top 12 fantasy quarterback on a per game basis. He's top 20 fantasy points in 3 of his last 4 outings. He's doing it without the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell, which I thought wasn't going to be possible, but Clint Kubiak has him playing very well. And it's not just Jackson Smith and Jigba. It's Torrey Horton, some of these young guys who are coming on. And Torrey Horton, we're going to talk about in a second here, but the tight ends, AJ Barner, Elijah Arroyo, they have other young talent that is emerging in this offense that could potentially make them even better in the passing attack as the season goes along. So no reason that he can't keep this going. Cardinals are going to be on a short week too. It's going to be a quick turnaround for them in week 10. So it's another reason to play Darnold. And then we get to the heart of it. JJ McCarthy, 29% rostered. And I feel like Harmon's just going to laugh his way through this one. But, he starts off this game very hot. He comes out of this game. He's playing very well. The second half, a lot more volatile, but he does lead them to the win. He does what was necessary, and that's going to at least keep him under center moving forward here for a while. Now, he's finished as the QB 11 overall in week 1. He currently sits as the QB 12, which is Monday Night Football left to go here. So there's a chance. I mean, he's probably going to get pushed down, so he won't be a QB 1 in both of those games, but those are decent fantasy outings. He has 3 touchdowns in 2 of those 3 games that he's started so far. 6 touchdowns total, 4 passing, 2 rushing. He's getting it done with his legs. That's given a little bit of boost to his fantasy value as well. We know the weapons that he has. I think you got to be excited about him as a streamer and a guy that could potentially still sneak into the low-end QB1 range in some weeks, but we'll hear what Harmon has to say about that in a minute. And then Marcus Mariota, like I said, can give you a fraction of what Jaden Daniels does, maybe 70% or so. In some positive matchups, he's going to be able to get into your lineup. He can run the ball a little bit. We know how valuable that is for fantasy. So all of those things together make those guys the top pickups this week. If you go any further than that, it is going to be very, very risky. So you're going to want to focus on these 4 names, Harmon.
God, yeah. My Jaden Daniels teams are desperately hoping I can get Joe Flacco, who leads the NFL in dropbacks over the last 4 months. He just basically is Joe Burrow. He's like, from a fantasy perspective, that's who he is. It's insane to say, but that's the reality of the situation. Yeah, McCarthy, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I could possibly put him in my fantasy lineup and feel great about it, but I understand where you're coming from on this one.
It's a streamer option, right? Like when we're talking about fab bids, it's like a 1%. It's you're not bidding much. You're just picking them up because you need to, because there's no other options. And to see, like you said, like he is not just what he is right now. He's a player that has not played very much in the NFL. So maybe we'll see some improvement as the season goes along. If you're looking for like that guy to just throw out there this week that you might have a little bit more confidence in, it's probably Mariota, right? Like in his last 5 games where he's played more than 50% of the snaps for the Commanders, he's averaged 18.7 fantasy points per game. He's finished as a top 10 quarterback 3 times in those 5 games. So we know that he can get it done even with all the struggles of that Washington offense. So if you need the guy for this week, it's probably Mariota. If you need the guy long-term and you're looking for a little more upside, I think it would be McCarthy.
All right, let's get to running backs here. What do we got this week?
It's not a very exciting week for running backs, to be honest. Like Trey Benson's up at the 59% mark, so he's way over that 50% mark. But I do feel the need to mention him because he's available in 41% of leagues. So at some point, he is going to come back from IR. So he's somebody that people should at least consider. I think he could be an RB2 for your lineups. Tajay Spears, obviously here. These are names that we've talked about many times. Isaiah Davis on the Jets, Dylan Sampson on the Browns, and Tank Bigsby on the Eagles. And with Spears, I don't think we have to spend much time talking about him because I've gone over him a bunch of times, but he's outproduced Tony Pollard in 3 of their last 4 games. He's outsnapped Pollard in 2 of those 4. And there is a chance, and depending when people are listening to this, there is a chance that Pollard could get traded before the deadline. And if that happens, that could completely unlock Spears. And we saw him last year in the fantasy playoffs put up really, really good numbers. So he has that kind of upside in this offense. It's been tough for him to get there. Obviously, with Pollard out there as well, it's tough to get there. But we could see Pollard moved out of the way, or we just could see the team turn to Spears more down the stretch because Pollard hasn't been that effective this season. Isaiah Davis, another guy that I've highlighted everywhere because of the chance that Breece Hall could get moved. We don't know if that's going to happen or not, but Davis is a guy to hold on to in hopes that he could potentially become the starting running back for the Jets if Breece Hall goes somewhere else before the deadline. So keep him in mind. And the last time we saw him out there before the bye, he had over 100 scrimmage yards in that game against the Bengals. So that gives you some hope that he could produce if he gets into that job. Dylan Sampson. Now we're going to track a couple injuries here this week. One is going to be Quinshon Judkins on the Browns. The other is going to be Saquon Barkley on the Eagles. And that's why I'm talking about Sampson and Bigsby here. Quinshon Judkins dealing with an AC joint sprain. Coming back from the bye, he was out at practice today. It's still early in the week, so we're going to watch to see if he's practicing limited, if he gets up to full practices. Seems like he's probably going to be able to play this week, but just in case, you go pick up Sampson and you hold on to him in case there's a chance that he gets a start this week. And Bigsby, similar situation, Saquon Barkley with a groin issue. We saw Barkley say that it wasn't that big of a deal. I think Ian Rappaport had a tweet about that it's not something significant, but another one we're going to monitor. And regardless, Tank Bigsby, the last game, he came out, he showed he is the number 2 back in that Eagles backfield. So if something ever happens to Saquon Barkley, Tank Bigsby would have a lot of value. There's a reason they traded for him. Took a little while for him to get going, but he is the guy to roster behind Saquon Barkley now.
Yeah, and that in and of itself makes him somebody to, especially if you're a contending team, right? Like you've got a good record, you've got good depth. You can say goodbye to one of your backups and just stash Tank Bigsby because he looked great. And I think Tank Bigsby is a good back. Like he's not terrible. He didn't last on this Jaguars roster, but he brings some explosiveness to him. So I do think he's somebody that is a great stash candidate. Just getting the information that he is the number 2 is really powerful here. For Dylan Sampson, same thing. He's the stash guy on this team. Kevin Stefanski handed off play calling duties, which is the second time in 2 years that he's done that. Tommy Reese now is going to call plays. I don't know that that means anything for this Browns offense, but it's not a good sign with where things are going. Dylan Gabriel is going to remain the starter for now. The Browns are circling the drain. So I don't even know if Quinshon Judkins is not out there. I don't even know if I'm like trying to start many Browns on my fantasy team, although Cedric Tillman is coming back off IR. So that is at least something to note. But yeah, Sampson is at least the guy we know is the number 2 behind Judkins.
So, I don't even know if I'm like trying to start many Browns on my fantasy team, although Cedric Tillman is coming back off IR. So that is at least something to note. But yeah, Sampson is at least the guy we know is the number 2 behind Judkins. Well, if you think back to that first game before we saw Judkins out there with the team, Samson had 20 touches in that game, had 93 scrimmage yards. That was back in the opener. So he can produce. A lot of that came through the air, but that's part of his game, right? So I think you make a really good point as well about as we get past bye weeks, you do want to start to fill up those bench spots with these high upside backup running backs. That is the best spot. That is the best position to kind of take these guys, put them on your bench, and if an injury happens, all of a sudden you see their value blow up. So I think it's good that you brought that up.
All right, we're going to take another quick break. When we come back, we'll run through wide receivers and tight ends you can add off the waiver wire right after this. All right, we're back. We're continuing to run through the waiver wire here with Boone. And I got to say, that running back section lacked a little bit of juice. This wide receiver group, though, there's some pretty interesting names here. So we've got 4 to go through, Boone. Take us through these guys.
All right, so the first one, Torrey Horton, he's going against the Cardinals. Parker Washington at the Texans. Tez Johnson versus the Patriots. Don't forget about him coming off a bye. And then Alec Pierce versus the Falcons. Really excited to talk about him. But let's start with Horton. I mean, just a monster game from him this week. Cooper Kupp, sideline. It was a heel and a hamstring injury. And you see Horton go off with the opportunity, right? 4 grabs, 48 yards. 2 touchdowns. I saw Harmon tweeting about him a ton. I've written him up in the deep stashes column before, so hopefully people were all over this one. He's now found the end zone 5 times in his first 8 contests, and that's mostly being a part-time player in those games. It wasn't always like this week where I think he played over 70% of the snaps. So we'll see how fast Kupp can get back out on the field here, but he is a bit of an older player, right? 32 years old. And we'll see, is this just the beginning of possibly Horton taking over and moving ahead of him in the pecking order in this passing attack? I think that would make a lot of sense. I think he brings more juice now, a strong route runner, a guy that's just at a different stage of his career than Cooper Kupp is. So let's see Horton continue to get more opportunity. I think he's a wide receiver 3 flex option moving forward. Parker Washington, I mean, prior to week 9, like you had Travis Hunter placed on IR. You had Tim Patrick ruled out with a groin injury. And then, I mean, the situation, it's way, way worse. Brian Thomas Jr. leaves the game with an ankle injury. Diami Brown leaves with a concussion. Like, the receiver room is devastated now. The last man standing is Washington, and there's a chance moving forward now he could be the number 1 receiver in week 10 if BTJ can't get out there. And to his credit for Washington, I mean, he excelled here. 8 passes that he caught for 90 yards. He now has 12 grabs, 142 yards, and 19 targets over the last 2 games. There's still a lot to be sorted out on the injury front, so this is one where people are going to have to pay attention all week long. Check my rankings. I'm sure we'll talk about it on the show. Keep an eye on Parker Washington and this Jags receiving core, but right now it looks like he might be the top guy, so he would be a wide receiver 3 flex option there. Tez Johnson, I mean, another situation where you have a team coming up by, a guy that might be a little bit forgotten here, but we don't know when Chris Godwin's going to return. Mike Evans is going to be out for a while here. He's not coming back anytime soon. So it's Emeka Egbuka, and then who else is going to step up? And Johnson so far has been that guy, at least 40 yards in 4 straight games, touchdowns in 2 of his last 3. The volume has been there too, 15 targets over his last 2 outings. So keep him in mind. You wouldn't necessarily think with the body type he has that he would be a volume guy, but he is getting enough volume. He's also in the wide receiver 3 flex range. And then Alec Pierce, this is the one that I want to hear what Harmon has to say about because he has been shockingly good this season. He doesn't get talked up enough either, right? If you look at his last 6 games, he's gone for 67 yards or more 5 different times. In his last 3, here are the stat lines: 5 for 98, 2 for 69, and then this week, 6 for 115. He's seen double-digit targets in 2 of those last 3 outings. There's just so much to like about his production. And if you want a way to invest in this Colts attack and a way to do it very, very cheaply, I think Alec Pierce is the way to do it, right? He's available in 74% of leagues right now. He's another guy that's in that wide receiver 3 flex range. So it is a packed group. And that's why I kept mentioning throughout the show when we were talking about certain receivers, there's just so many of these guys that you can get off the waiver wire and plug right into your lineup, Harmon, that you don't need to hold on to some of those guys that you've been waiting on for a while who just aren't producing, because you can go get some of these guys that are.
Oh, yeah, for real. Like the Darnell Mooney types versus pretty much all of these guys to different degrees.
Right?
Give me a break. Where do you think Alec Pierce ranks in yards per game among wide receivers this season?
Oh, I have no idea. Hit me.
12th. He's 12th among wide receivers in yards per game. 71.6. He's ahead of his teammate Michael Pittman. He's obviously ahead of Josh Downs, who's been kind of their red zone answer the last few. Like, he's been getting a bunch of those like looks, which has been great for him. That's like a nice role for him to have. But Alec Pierce has been like legit good, and I've been talking about this for a few weeks now. I did a breakdown on my YouTube channel about this. He has evolved his game. He is not just a sacrificial X shot player. He's running big in breaking routes. He's been smoking guys on out routes the last couple of weeks. So he's a legit player. It was the right couple matchups these last 2 weeks, which is why I've been highlighting him so much. Titans, Steelers, those were total smash spots. So I'm not saying that Alec Pierce is going to be a consistent player for you. It will not shock me if in 2 weeks he's averaging 50 yards per game, not 70 yards per game, because he has a couple duds here and there. But the ceiling is real. I'm really glad you highlighted him, because his rostership percentage is like stupid. And I feel like I've been talking about him on FFL, Bold Predictions, this show, and we gotta pump these numbers up, people. He's 12 yards per game. He can't be like sub 30% rostered. Enough already. Torrey Horton is awesome. I talked about him obviously on the solo recap show last night, Boone, but after going back and charting the game this morning, I come away even more convinced that the Seahawks cannot put him back on the shelf, that it's going to be really difficult to put that game back in the bottle, because not only is he good and wins against man coverage and is the exact type of player that I thought he'd be as a prospect, because he is also their best on-ball like player besides JSN and can run real routes. Cooper Kupp's just not that guy at this point. He allows them to move JSN around. He allows them to do what they did last night, like put him in the backfield for a create a touch type situation. So to me, we talk about these second half of the season rookie year risers. Why not Torrey Horton? Yeah,
no, I totally agree with you. It's somebody who's so exciting in an offense, a passing attack at least, that is pretty exciting this year. It's in the exact kind of spot you want to invest in. And yeah, he's the top pickup. He is the picture on my waiver wire column. He's in the headline this week. He's the guy to go and get. I mean, some of those other guys I mentioned, like a Trey Benson, who's way over the 50% mark, they would be the number one guy, but they're rostered in too many leagues to really qualify. So yeah, in terms of guys who are available in a lot of leagues, and Torrey Horton is available almost everywhere still, this is the guy that you want to go out and get and invest in. Shall we move to tight ends, Harmon? Should we move on, or do you want to talk more about the receivers?
Real quick, just on Parker Washington, I think last week is not just an opportunity-based fluke. He was in the slot on 61% of the passing plays against this Raiders team. That is by far a season high for him. He had never been higher than 48% in any other game. And I know they're trying to get Travis Hunter activated as that slot receiver, so I understand that part of it. But to me, like, just look at him from a dimensions standpoint. He's 5'10", 204. He is not an outside receiver. Like, in different games this season, he's had a 20 air yard per target mark. He's not like an outside deep threat, and I think that's why the drop numbers had been higher for him at times. He's one of these Jags receivers that has had drop issues this year, but he's also a guy that, again, even if there have been drops, he's not shied away from contact like some of these other players here. So I think there's some staying power to Parker Washington, who was like a day 3 prospect I really liked coming into the league as kind of I called him a little bit of like a Bud Light Golden Tate type of player. And I think we finally saw him in a role that looked a little bit more like that this past week than we'd seen previously. All of his production, again, like that slot stuff, that's much more sustainable for him.
Yeah, he's had some moments even before this year. It isn't like he's doing this out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
There were times when Christian Kirk was there and Christian Kirk got hurt and Parker Washington stepped in and actually had some decent games. So he's a guy that's shown on a limited basis in the past, and now he's going to get a chance to see what he can do and maybe more of a feature role out of necessity. And yet so far it's looking pretty good here. All right, let's go to tight ends here. I want to talk about a few of them. We'll start with Harold Fannin Jr., who I've talked about a ton of times. Colston Loveland, he'll be versus the Giants. He's coming off that big game. Can he do it again? Theo Johnson at the Bears, and then Juwan Johnson at the Panthers. And for Harold Fannin Jr., I'll mention him here. He's just been like a mainstay in the waiver wire column, so I don't want to talk too much about it. But there's a chance
that David Njoku
could, right? Like for some reason, he's not over the 50% rostered mark, so I have to keep mentioning him. But there's a chance he's another one of these situations where we might see David Njoku get traded. The latest reports about it make it seem like he's probably going to stay in Cleveland. But even with Njoku there as his teammate, Harold Fannin in the conversation as a low-end tight end 1, a high-end tight end 2. He's been pretty productive here. And in one spot where I lost Tucker Kraft in one of the office leagues for Yahoo, Harmon, today I did the move where I went out and dropped a bench player and I picked up David Njoku, who is still a free agent today because he hasn't played because he's on bye this week. So just trying to find anything to fill that Tucker Kraft size hole in my heart. Nothing can actually do it. Maybe Colston Loveland could do it for some people, though, because Colston Loveland, we've talked about a bunch of different rookies stepping up this year. He's the latest one to do it. Just a huge eruption spot for him here. Caught 6 balls, 118 yards, 2 touchdowns, catches that game-winning 58-yard score. It was against the Bengals. It was a great matchup. All of those things have to be factored in. He had more yards in this game than he had in his previous 6 games. So that tells you just how huge this performance was for him. But Cole Kmet forced to leave this game. So will Cole Kmet be able to play next week? I believe he's in concussion protocol. Normally guys miss 1 week. So matchup with the Giants could be another good spot for Colston Loveland. And just remember, this guy was a first-round pick. This is a guy they want involved in the offense. Ben Johnson is going to find ways to get him the ball. It won't always be 100 yards, but I think he's a guy that definitely is a priority add this week at tight end and somebody that could get in that mix in that low-end tight end 1, high-end tight end 2 range. Theo Johnson, now we're talking more about streamers. He's more of like a touchdown or bust streamer, but 5 touchdowns in his last 6 games. You know, all the injuries to the pass catchers in this offense, they need him to be involved. Juwan Johnson, he had that strong stretch early in the season, then was injured for a little bit. Now having another strong stretch here. 5 for 79, 5 for 53, and then this week, 31 yards and a touchdown. So 3 straight pretty good performances from him. That's enough to get him back in the tight end 2 streamer mix. And then I have my deep stash, and I'll just mention him here because it's also a tight end here, Harmon. Luke Musgrave, the man who is actually going to fill in for Tucker Kraft in Green Bay. Now, not the same player, doesn't have the same yak ability. He's more of like an explosive guy, a guy who can actually make some plays downfield as well in an offense where if you're not Tucker Kraft, are you going to get the ball that often at tight end, or are they going to continue to spread the ball around? I think that's probably what's going to happen here. So I'm not looking at Musgrave as anything more than a tight end 2 streamer type, but he's also on the radar as a guy that you could pick up and put into your lineup if you need some help at tight end this week.
Yeah, he's not nearly the blocker that Tucker Kraft is, just the overall physical player. So that's why Kraft, who was drafted after Luke Musgrave, has actually usurped him as the starting tight end here. But yeah, I think there's some chance for Musgrave. He would be the deepest play here, as you mentioned, for sure. I think I would rank them. It would be Fannin to me would be number 1 if I'm trying to replace Tucker Kraft, which I am in several leagues. It would be Fannin number 1. It would be then Colston Loveland number 2. Juwan Johnson, Theo Johnson, Luke Musgrave. God, I've just remembered the league one of the leagues I have Tucker Kraft. I actually had a Rondé Gadsden like stashed at the beginning of the season and dropped him for some goofball. But luckily I picked up Colston. I picked up Colston Loveland and I started him in the flex spot this past week. So there's actually that, which is nice. But all right. Those are the tight end pickups this week. There's at least some options there if you, like us, are reeling from the Tucker Kraft injury. Boone, hell of a show, buddy. This was absolutely packed. The people show those. Tell them they should go read your waiver wire content for even more.
Waiver wire column goes up every Monday. I update it after Monday Night Football if anything happens of note. So we'll be watching tonight to see if it does. But definitely go read the column because it goes way, way deeper than the guys we talked about today.